The hum of the airplane engines filled the cabin as passengers settled into their seats, ready for the journey ahead. Among them was Marcus, a soft-spoken black man with a calm demeanor, who quietly took his seat near the window. Marcus didn't seem like someone who craved attention. He just wanted a peaceful flight. But that wasn't going to happen today. A few moments later, a middle-aged white woman boarded the plane, her designer bag slung over her shoulder and a scowl already on her face. Her eyes scanned the row where Marcus was seated, and immediately her expression shifted. She froze, her lips tightening into a thin line, before pointing directly at him. "You're in the wrong seat," she barked, her voice sharp enough to turn heads. Marcus politely double-checked his ticket and replied, "No, ma'am, this is my assigned seat." But she wasn't having it. "Are you sure? People like you always seem to get things mixed up," she sneered, loud enough for nearby passengers to hear. A murmur spread through the cabin, and Marcus could feel the weight of everyone's eyes on him. Staying calm, he repeated himself, showing her the ticket. But the woman wasn't backing down. She waved over a flight attendant, insisting that there must be a mistake. "I shouldn't have to sit next to him," she whispered, though it was loud enough to catch Marcus's ear. The flight attendant tried to de-escalate the situation, offering to find her another seat. But the woman dug her heels in. She demanded to know why someone like him was in first class, a place she clearly believed he didn't belong. Tension filled the cabin as passengers watched the scene unfold, some too stunned to intervene, others visibly uncomfortable. Marcus, however, stayed composed, his gaze steady as he endured her accusations and demeaning remarks. And just as it seemed the situation couldn't get any worse, something happened that left the entire plane speechless. You won't believe who Marcus really is, and why this moment changed everything. The flight attendant stood there, caught between the angry woman and the calm but clearly uncomfortable Marcus. Other passengers shifted in their seats, some muttering quietly, others pretending to look at their phones but stealing glances at the escalating scene. Marcus remained composed, though anyone could see this wasn't the first time he had experienced something like this. The woman crossed her arms, her voice dripping with indignation. "I just find it odd," she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "I've been flying for years, and I've never seen someone like him in first class. How does someone even afford it?" Marcus met her gaze briefly, his calm demeanor hiding the storm that might have been raging inside. Instead of retaliating, he quietly picked up the book he had been reading before the commotion began. It was an old, worn hardcover with gold lettering on the spine, something that hinted at history and wisdom. The title wasn't visible, but its presence seemed to say more about Marcus than any words could. The woman scoffed, clearly annoyed that he wasn't reacting the way she wanted. She turned her attention to the passengers around her, trying to rally some kind of agreement. "Doesn't anyone else think this is strange? I mean, I just want to feel safe on this flight." A man in the row ahead turned slightly, giving her a disapproving look, but he said nothing. A young woman across the aisle nervously glanced at Marcus, her expression conflicted, as though she wanted to say something but didn't know how. The flight attendant, clearly flustered, tried again to calm the situation. "Ma'am, I assure you there's no mistake. This passenger has every right to be here." The woman huffed, but finally agreed to take the seat offered to her in another row, muttering under her breath as she gathered her things. As she walked away, she shot Marcus one last icy glare. But as the flight settled back into a tense quiet, the whispers began. Passengers were curious now. Who was this man who handled such blatant disrespect with such grace? One older gentleman leaned over to his companion and whispered, "He looks familiar. I swear I've seen him somewhere before." Marcus remained silent, his eyes focused on his book. But there was something about him, a quiet confidence, a presence that hinted at a much bigger story waiting to be uncovered. What would the passengers think if they knew the truth? As the plane cruised at 30,000 feet, the awkwardness in the cabin lingered. The incident with the woman had left an unspoken tension in the air. People kept stealing glances at Marcus, Their curiosity piqued. Who was he? Why hadn't he said more? And why did that older man seem to recognize him? Meanwhile, the woman who had caused the scene sat a few rows back, still fuming. She whispered to the passenger beside her, a middle-aged man with headphones around his neck. "Can you believe they let someone like that just waltz into first class? It's ridiculous." The man, clearly uncomfortable, shrugged and put his headphones back on, ending the conversation. But her words lingered. Despite her new seat, she kept peering toward Marcus, her frustration clearly unresolved. Up in first class, Marcus quietly sipped his water and continued reading, his calm demeanor masking any inner turmoil. The book he held now revealed part of its title, *Paths of Leadership*. The gold lettering caught the light, and a passenger across the aisle raised an eyebrow. "Leadership," he murmured to himself, as if connecting dots that hadn't quite formed a full picture yet. The whispers among the passengers grew louder as they began to speculate. "Maybe he's a CEO or something," one person said. Another replied, "Nah, he's too young for that. Maybe a professor." But there was more to Marcus than his quiet confidence and that mysterious book. As he flipped through the pages, a flight attendant approached him, her voice low and professional. "Mr. Taylor," she said, and Marcus looked up. "I wanted to apologize for earlier. We've noted the incident, and the captain has been informed." Marcus nodded, his tone polite but firm. "Thank you. I just hope the rest of the flight can be peaceful." Her words, though brief, didn't go unnoticed by nearby passengers. "Mr. Taylor," someone muttered under their breath. "Where have I heard that name before?" In the back of the plane, the woman overheard the name too. Her brows furrowed as if trying to recall something. Then her expression shifted, first confusion, then disbelief. She pulled out her phone, scrolling furiously. Whatever she discovered left her frozen, her mouth slightly open. "It can't be," she whispered, gripping her phone tightly. All around the cabin, the pieces of the puzzle were slowly coming together. But no one was prepared for what would happen next. The tension in the cabin grew thicker with every passing minute. Passengers exchanged uneasy glances as if they were all waiting for something to happen. In first class, Marcus remained composed, his fingers gently turning the pages of his book, though his eyes seemed to drift beyond the words. In the back of the plane, the woman sat stiffly, her phone still clutched in her hands. She stared at the screen, her face pale, as though she'd just uncovered a secret too big to process. Her lips moved slightly, whispering something to herself. Then, with a sharp inhale, she turned to the man beside her. "Do you know who that is?" she asked in a hushed but urgent tone, pointing toward Marcus. The man shook his head, uninterested, but she wasn't deterred. She leaned closer, her voice lowering even more. "That's Marcus Taylor. Marcus Taylor." The man raised an eyebrow, clearly still unimpressed. "Am I supposed to know who that is?" The woman looked almost offended by his ignorance. "He's one of the top business leaders in the world. Billionaire. Philanthropist. He's been on the cover of magazines. He's even spoken at the UN." Her words spilled out in a frantic whisper, and her hands fumbled as she searched for more evidence on her phone. "Look, here's an article about him. And here's a video of him giving a keynote speech." The man leaned closer, his expression shifting as he read the article she held up. The headline was bold, *Marcus Taylor, the visionary behind global change*. Meanwhile, in first class, the murmurs around Marcus grew louder. People were no longer subtle about their stares. One passenger finally leaned over and asked, "Excuse me, are you Marcus Taylor?" Marcus paused, setting his book down. For a moment, he didn't answer. Then, with a small nod and a polite smile, he confirmed it. "Yes, I am." A ripple of realization swept through the cabin. Some passengers exchanged wide-eyed looks, while others pulled out their phones, hurriedly searching his name. The whispers turned into hushed excitement, though Marcus remained as calm and unbothered as he had been throughout the flight. The woman in the back, however, wasn't celebrating. Her face flushed with embarrassment as she realized the weight of her earlier behavior. But it wasn't just shame, it was fear. She had humiliated one of the most influential men in the world, and now everyone knew it. Just as the tension reached its peak, the captain's voice came over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're beginning our descent. Please prepare for landing." The announcement brought a momentary pause, but the energy in the cabin was electric. Everyone wondered, what would happen next? Would Marcus confront her? Would she apologize? Or would this story take an even more unexpected turn? As the plane began its descent, the cabin buzzed with quiet chatter. Passengers who had been oblivious earlier now couldn't stop sneaking glances at Marcus. The name Marcus Taylor seemed to ripple through the rows like an electric current, each person reacting with a mix of awe, curiosity, or disbelief. Marcus remained calm, his posture relaxed, but his eyes occasionally flicked toward the back of the plane where the woman sat. She hadn't moved since her frantic scrolling, her body tense, and her phone now lying face down on her tray table. Her earlier confidence had evaporated, replaced by an uneasy stillness. Just as the plane leveled out for landing, another flight attendant approached Marcus. She crouched slightly to speak to him in a low voice, her tone professional but clearly deferential. "Mr. Taylor, the captain would like to personally welcome you to the city and ensure you have a smooth exit upon arrival. Is there anything you need?" Marcus shook his head politely. "Thank you, but I'm fine." This interaction only fueled the whispers around him. A man a few rows back whispered to his wife, "He's got the captain's attention. Who is this guy?" But then something unexpected happened. From the back of the plane, the woman stood up. Her movements were stiff, her face flushed, but her determination was clear. Passengers turned to watch as she made her way down the aisle, her heels clicking against the floor, each step amplifying the tension. She stopped a few feet away from Marcus, her expression a mix of embarrassment and defiance. The cabin seemed to hold its breath. Everyone waited to see what she would do. She began, her voice cracking slightly. She cleared her throat and tried again. "I just wanted to say I'm sorry. For earlier, I didn't realize who you were." A murmur spread through the rows. Marcus looked up at her, his face calm but unreadable. After a long pause, he finally spoke. "It's not about who I am. It's about how you treated me when you didn't know." The woman's face turned crimson, and she opened her mouth to respond. But before she could, the plane jolted as its wheels touched down on the runway. The passengers erupted into murmurs again, this time louder, as the realization of Marcus's words sank in. Just as the cabin settled, another twist arrived. A passenger from economy class approached, holding a phone in their hand. "Mr. Taylor," they said nervously, "you've gone viral. Someone recorded the whole thing." The tension skyrocketed. The woman's face paled as she turned toward the passenger. "Wait, what?" Marcus, however, remained calm. He leaned back in his seat, his composure unshaken, as the reality of the situation began to ripple through the plane. What would happen now that the world had a front-row seat to this moment? The cabin was alive with whispers and the faint glow of phone screens as passengers searched for the viral video. The tension between Marcus and the woman was palpable, like the eye of a storm. She stood frozen, her face pale and her hands trembling. Marcus remained seated, his calm gaze fixed on her, waiting for her next move. The woman turned to the passenger holding the phone. You can't post that. It's private. You have no right." Her voice wavered, but her panic was clear. The passenger shrugged uncomfortably. "I didn't record it," they said, "but it's already out there. Look." They turned the phone so she could see the screen. A video of her berating Marcus earlier in the flight was trending, shared thousands of times with captions like, "*racist woman learns the hard way who she's messing with." Her eyes widened as she scrolled through the comments, each one harsher than the last. Words like *entitlement*, *discrimination*, and *karma* jumped out at her. Her breathing quickened, and she looked around the cabin as though searching for an escape. Marcus finally stood, his tall frame commanding attention as he faced her. His voice was calm but firm. "You're worried about your reputation now, aren't you? But imagine living every day knowing people judge you before they even know your name." The woman's lips quivered, but she said nothing. The cabin was silent, every passenger hanging on Marcus's words. He took a deep breath and added, "I don't need your apology for me. I've dealt with worse. But maybe think about what this moment means. For you, for everyone here." The woman's shoulders slumped as she nodded faintly, unable to meet his eyes. Just then, the captain's voice came over the intercom. "Welcome to our destination, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the crew, I'd like to thank Mr. Marcus Taylor for joining us today." The passengers erupted in applause, a mix of admiration for Marcus and relief that the tension was finally easing. But as the plane taxied to the gate, Marcus's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen and smiled faintly. Turning to the flight attendant, he said, "Could you let the captain know I'd like to meet him before I leave? I think he might appreciate this." The flight attendant nodded, puzzled, but obliged. As Marcus stepped off the plane, a small group of reporters waited at the gate, their cameras already rolling. The viral video had spread faster than anyone could have imagined, and standing among the reporters was someone unexpected, a young woman holding a mic with the logo of a major news outlet. "Mr. Taylor," she called out, her voice trembling with excitement, "can you confirm what everyone's speculating? Is it true you're about to announce a major initiative to combat systemic discrimination in travel and public spaces?" Marcus stopped, his calm demeanor breaking into a warm smile. "Let's just say, this flight gave me a lot to think about." The reporters buzzed with questions as Marcus turned to walk away, his words leaving both the passengers and the world wondering what was next. The woman from the plane, now watching from a distance, realized this moment wasn't just about her, it was about something much bigger. As Marcus walked through the terminal, flanked by reporters and curious onlookers, he kept his pace steady, his expression composed. The buzz of excitement followed him, but he seemed unaffected by the chaos around him. A calm, quiet strength carried him forward, as if this wasn't his first time under such scrutiny, and it wasn't. Behind him, the woman from the plane lingered near the gate, unsure whether to leave or approach him again. Her earlier bravado was long gone, replaced by a heavy weight of regret. She clutched her phone tightly, scrolling through comments on the viral video. Some defended her, saying she didn't deserve the backlash, but most were harsh, calling her out for her behavior. One comment stuck with her. Asterisk, "If this moment doesn't change her, nothing will." Asterisk, she closed her phone and looked toward Marcus, who was now out of sight, swallowed by the crowd. She took a deep breath, unsure of what the future held for her, but one thing was certain, she would never forget this day. Meanwhile, Marcus met with the captain in the quiet of the cockpit. The captain extended his hand with a sheepish smile. "Mr. Taylor, I didn't realize you were on board until the flight attendant mentioned it. I'm honored to have had you as a passenger." Marcus shook his hand warmly. "Thank you, Captain. You ran a good flight, and I appreciate your crew's professionalism, especially under the circumstances." The captain looked a little embarrassed but nodded. "We try our best, and I'm glad you handled things so gracefully." Marcus handed the captain a signed copy of his book, Paths of Leadership *, with a personal note written on the inside cover. The captain's eyes lit up as he read it. "Thank you. This means a lot." As Marcus left the airport, his phone buzzed again. His assistant was on the line, her voice tinged with urgency and excitement. "Marcus, the video is everywhere. People are talking about discrimination, privilege, and accountability. This could be the perfect time to announce your initiative." Marcus paused for a moment, looking out at the bustling city beyond the airport doors. "Let's do it," he said. "Schedule the press conference for tomorrow. But let's make sure the focus stays on the issue, not me." The next day, Headlines lit up across the globe as Marcus announced a groundbreaking initiative to address systemic bias in public spaces, particularly in travel. He pledged millions to programs focused on education, diversity training, and advocacy for equitable treatment. His story from the flight became a powerful example of why such efforts were needed. As for the woman from the plane, she watched the announcement live from her living room. Marcus's words resonated deeply, and for the first time, she felt compelled to confront her own biases. She didn't post any defensive statements or excuses online. Instead, she quietly started reading about systemic racism and privilege, determined to change herself before speaking out. The incident on the plane became a catalyst for conversations worldwide. It wasn't just about one man or one moment. It was a reminder of how far societies still have to go and the power of individuals to spark change. And as Marcus Taylor continued his work, his message was clear. Dignity and respect should never depend on who you are, where you come from, or the seat you're in.